asking you, I'm trusting you, do not engage, do not throw, do not engage in that type of way. That will just make matters worse. We have an opportunity here, okay? I know.
A few moments later.
So if you were wondering for whatever reason what Democrats spent their Memorial Day doing, which I'm sure you weren't, but we're going to bring you that news anyway, it was basically exactly as you would expect. These idiots show up to protest. They have nothing better to do with their lives. Very often it gets illegal and violent, but obviously it wouldn't be left-wing if those two words were not implicated in basically everything they do. But it would include them protesting against ICE. Yes, they are back to doing this once again. Apparently some other Democrats showed up to protest against Donald Trump at the Arlington National Cemetery, which is just such a classy thing to do. I'm so glad to see that leftists love our military and our country so much, and they carry themselves with the dignity and grace and empathy that they constantly virtue signal about. But I do want to hone in particularly on what went down today at the Newark, New Jersey ICE facility, which, if you're familiar, has seen various different cases of Democrat elected representatives showing up and getting themselves in trouble over the past year or so, where today Democrat Senator Andy Kim showed up to this mob that was blocking and obstructing the entrance to this ICE facility, and first of all decided to join in the protests and cheer all these people on. And then when he realized what they were doing was illegal, because as we've seen in many different cases of them standing outside ICE facilities, they block the driveway, they impede law enforcement vehicles from being able to enter or exit, he basically got there and started begging Democrat voters to not break the law, of course, which the typical leftist is not going to comply with. And so it was this whole disaster where apparently even the senator got hit by some of the tear gas and pepper spray that inevitably had to be deployed against this unlawful assembly that he was joining in, inciting in, cheering on. So yet another case when Democrat politicians go on TV and claim their supporters are such peaceful, law-abiding, amazing people that the Trump administration is cracking down on in the streets for absolutely no reason, and then gets met with the brutal reality check when he asks his own supporters and voters to follow the law and they refuse to do so. So welcome to your voter base, Democrats, in 2026. We've been trying to tell you this for several months. We explain to people when, a lot of different characters in media will say, oh, well, the American people are united. It's the politicians who are trying to divide us. That's literally a psyop. No, that's not the case. Actually, when you look at the support base of the Democrat Party, they're not your friends. They're violent people. They're the very people who assassinated Charlie Kirk and celebrated about it en masse. We're talking hundreds of thousands, millions of people potentially on social media. You've seen the behavior in real life. This is the reality of who leftists are, who the Democrat voter base is. And it is what it is. Like, is it a thing that I like? Is it something I'm celebrating? Am I intentionally trying to demonize the other fellow quote unquote Americans in this country? No, I'm just telling you an honest fact from lived experience and the experience we see every single day. When people repeatedly show you who they are, it would be wise to say, oh, maybe we should stop trying to pretend as if they're naive or misguided or they just don't know what they're doing. They're being misrepresented. No, they keep on showing us they're violent and want to, break laws and do all these things. Yeah, like we should believe them. Anyways, let's get into this though. We'll cover some of the various ridiculous Memorial Day quote unquote protests that leftists were engaged in, including the Senator Andy Kim debacle, which apparently they're still there to this very hour. So they're spending all night camping at this ICE facility. Let's get into it. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. That is the best way to support our work, and it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And that said, it's been a while since we've witnessed wide-scale protests outside of ICE facilities, but after all, the midterms are coming very soon, so you can fully expect this is going to be a left-wing mobilization strategy. Get ready for this, and arguably it might be nice to wrap up things in the Middle East right now, because let me just predict there's a lot of political capital that's going to have to be spent once again on left-wing domestic terrorism as we did last year. Okay, this is just going to be a reality that the Trump administration is going to have to deal with. But anyways, so here they are once again today outside of the Newark ICE facility. And as you probably have seen, we covered a lot of these protests happening last year. The typical leftist strategy is they stand here and block the driveway. They block the entrance to the facility and, they're doing their protest. And then inevitably what always happens every single time, because these federal facilities have active law enforcement operations going on, a federal vehicle has to enter or exit the facility. Leftists knowingly are blocking the gate and blocking the driveway that allows the car to enter and exit. And so what happens is DHS gets on the microphone and says, hey, we need you guys to clear the space. Please move out of the way. Our vehicles need to get through. You're not allowed to be here. Every single time leftists refuse. And then that's how very often you get these scenes that you've seen many times of tear gas being deployed against the so-called protesters outside of the facility. It's because they refuse to obey commands. They refuse to follow the law. They knowingly disobey what law enforcement is saying. They're impeding law enforcement operations, all of this stuff. And then, of course, after the fact, they go there and scream, they're tear gassing peaceful protesters. You've heard this a million times, right? Can you believe it? We were just standing there doing nothing wrong, and then the law enforcement got brutal and violent with us. Well, it's very ironic that these are the same people who call the Trump assassination staged, because I would say about all of these incidents at ICE facilities or involving ICE, that, by the way, would even include that of Renee Good or Alex Preddy. In many ways, it was quote unquote staged. Not to say that, it didn't happen or something like that, but rather that, yes, in every single one of these cases, and this is a classic Marxist protest strategy that dates all the way back to the 1960s. This is nothing new, is that they intentionally go there and knowingly break the law or provoke some type of action that they know is going to get a response out of law enforcement that involves something where you can take a nice picture or video, right? The tear gas, the water hoses, the protesters getting arrested, things like that. And then they run to their voter base and to mainstream media and say, look at what happened to these peaceful protesters. No, the entire thing was staged, right? You knowingly were putting yourself in this situation. Renee Good drove her freaking car at the ICE agent, and then they said ICE murdered a random woman. You see how this stuff works? Alex Preddy shows up with a gun, then resists arrest while having a loaded gun on him. Not a very smart thing to be doing. And same situation here, right? They're standing here. They know they're blocking the gate. DHS says you have to move. They refuse to move. And then they get tear gas and say, well, we got tear gassed. I wonder why that's the case. So this is, of course, what they try to do. Now, what's hilarious is that this Andy Kim character apparently shows up and in this speech tries to beg his fellow leftists to stop obstructing ICE vehicles at the New Jersey federal building. So that is right. Effectively, a Democrat politician is trying to rein in his own voter base from being law-breaking and violent. And while I venture to guess, I want you to venture to guess, rather, how this went. Well, take a look for yourself.
So I just ask that we can be able to work to be able to open up a path here for these vehicles. I ask that you do not engage with the vehicles. I will go back here and visual ID each and every one of them. Okay? Windows down. But I'm asking you, I'm trusting you, do not engage, do not throw, do not engage in that type of way. That will just make matters worse. We have an opportunity here, okay? I know, I'm trying. Yeah, okay. Okay, everyone?
No, she's saying that it doesn't matter, So it's on her now, it's on them. That's fine.
We don't believe you!
Leave them all!
We need witnesses! They their fucking lives!
With my own eyes, each vehicle.
But it's the families themselves that are asking that no vehicle leave the site, that no one be transferred out.
Which family members are there? Can you share with
Protect your folks. They're here on site. You can talk to.
if they put you on to work something, like you get paid?
Yeah, so I guess credit where it's due, because it's extremely rare for a Democrat politician to even make an attempt to try to rein in their own crazy radical voter base. But as you could clearly see, he completely lost control. It's like watching the substitute teacher who has no ability to rein in the classroom is going absolutely crazy. And you see that. They're screaming no at him. They're literally saying, no, no, no. They're calling him a liar. They appear with their chance to be lumping him in with no ICE, no KKK, no fascist USA. So I guess even if you are an anti-ICE Democrat who basically just says, guys, we should have a peaceful protest and not break the law, you are implicated in being part of the KKK fascist USA, I guess is the message that is trying to be sent there. And yeah, overall, it just didn't work. But if you actually were in touch with your own voters, I don't know what you would expect. I don't know why you would remotely believe that would be successful. It's kind of frankly humiliating to watch, but hey, that's the reality check, right? Democrats paint their voters as these amazing, peaceful, hippie-loving people, and then in reality, notice how the hippie crowd who why do they all look like that? But anyways, that aside, you see, no, they have no interest in following the law. They have no interest in being civil about this. And actually, you for remotely cooperating with some form of law and order, you also are a traitor. So please make that be understood. And this is why I've said, you know, sure, the left-wing politicians have a lot to blame in this. That part is true. Mainstream media, all those things. But let's not also pretend as if the left-wing base, the actual voters, are not, in many cases, more radical and extreme than their politicians are. I mean, that's just simply the case, and you can see it right here, right? The politician is kind of maybe trying to rein these people in. Guess what? That ship sailed a long time ago, buddy. And yeah, it just he looks so weak and pathetic standing there even trying to say to these Antifa lunatics, hey, guys, can we be a little bit peaceful and law-abiding? No. But anyways, as you could imagine, the mob, as you could probably tell, by the way, in that video, the mob was not going to comply with this, which, of course, when ICE had to clear the road, resulted indeed in pepper balls and tear gas being deployed, and the crowd having to be forcibly pushed back because, as I said, leftists having a peaceful law-abiding protest, never seen it happen.
Hold the line. We didn't escalate shit.
Yeah, good job there, Andy Kim, you absolute pathetic loser. But I think to a large extent, he also has to be held accountable for this because we really have to ask, what did he think was going to happen? How did he think his voters were going to behave? I mean, we've seen it happen a million times, almost every single time that leftists show up to these ICE facilities and hold these types of protests. It goes the exact same way. So why did he think this time would be different? And it's pretty hilarious. You have him there casually admitting that actually that's what these Democrat voters have been doing the entire time. They're not getting tear gas for no reason outside these facilities. It's because either they get violent or they get unlawful because they block the entrance and refuse to move. And he said on the megaphone, hey, ICE needs to get a vehicle through. That's what's going on. And they're saying, no KKK, no fascist USA, right? These are the same people who say that the blockade of Iran, for example, is a human rights violation, while of course they believe no, they're trying to do a blockade of their own, right? How's the ICE facility supposed to get food then? You know, electricity, how are things supposed to be brought in and all that, right? No, I guess not, right? Let's blockade the ICE facilities. How are the migrants going to get their food, by the way? You know, they have to eat in there too inside the detention center. I don't know. But okay. So with all of that in mind, we, of course, have Andy Kim, likewise, maybe you could say to an extent, facing the same consequence or backlash as many of his voters did, because it appears that somehow, some way, and it's unclear at the moment why or how this happened, but I guess he got caught up in the pepper spray or something like that while he was, of course, hanging out with the leftist rioters outside of ICE Newark facility. Perhaps it happened because he basically caved to the pressure, as all of the Democrat politicians do, right? They're scared of the mob and they say, okay, fine, I'll stand out here with you guys. But for whatever reason it is, you can clearly see on this video, he was getting his eye treated for something that happened. So I don't know if, you know, he got directly hit by something, or maybe he's just being a weenie. You know, he was like really far away from the whole thing, but his eyes were stinging a little bit. So he's like, hey, you know, can you guys treat my eye? He's getting treated by the Antifa medics here. I don't know, but it's honestly just very poetic, right? Whatever happened here is just very fitting that it did happen. Hey, he showed up to the protest full of violent leftists. He tried to ask them to be peaceful. They booed him out of the room. And then he says, okay, fine, I'm going to stand in solidarity with you guys. And then he's like, oh, I got pepper sprayed, guys. What happened? Yeah, maybe don't engage with that stuff, right? If you really are a Democrat politician who doesn't endorse that type of behavior, then don't caucus with that behavior. But of course, we know the story, we know the truth, which is that, you know, I guess in some ways the politicians are not that different from the voters in the sense that if you abet behavior, if you enable certain behavior, in a way you are endorsing that behavior. So that's, of course, what you saw happen. And it appeared initially early in the day that, you know, the Newark protests basically got dispersed. But apparently, as of tonight, it looks like the protesters either stayed around or came back. And unfortunately, this is very concerning to me. I hope it's resolved by tomorrow morning. But it looks like now they are basically setting up these barricades and successfully blocking the DHS vehicles from going forward. So this is the current scene as of tonight.
Lock it arms. Lock it arms. Somebody needs to record. We need to record in case there's violence. We're not moving. Yep.
Wait.
We'll let them out as long as we can make one.
Please, let's see.
It's good. It's good. It's good. Okay.
Right.
Make sure to let him go.
Come on, go.
Okay. Oh, let me kill them. You're good. You're good.
Empty.
You guys are sealed.
Yeah, needless to say, this cannot be allowed to happen from start to finish. You notice exactly the strategy, right? They all sit there and block and say start recording because obviously, despite the fact that what they're doing is completely illegal and they're impeding law enforcement, they're going to claim, look, ICE ran over protesters if they simply drive ahead on the road that you are not allowed to block there. But then you can see these lunatics are showing up with flashlights and searching for who's inside the vehicle. I don't know if they're looking for migrant detainees or the ICE agents, and who knows what they're going to do to ICE agents, I guess, if like they find ICE agents inside the car. Like, that's why I say this whole situation cannot be allowed to happen. But you see that currently going on. And I'm sure Andy Kim's going to go around and, you know, once again say this is obviously a peaceful protest, very well-adjusted, normal people with completely, you know, peaceful, rational intents that they're going to engage in here. But look, I mean, I will say that maybe DHS wasn't predicting this because these types of protests have been rather quiet. So in the first 24 hours, maybe let's have some grace. Okay, National Guard, all that stuff, the extra manpower wasn't there. But I will say, this is something that you cannot just sit here and allow this to happen, much like we did last year, okay? And it's unfortunate because, as you probably well know, leftists intentionally try to stage these moments so that way, if something happens, if something goes down, then they'll use that in their propaganda like they did with Renee Good and like Alex Preddy. But that said, federal law enforcement, like who do these people think they are, right? They're blocking federal law enforcement vehicles and thinking that they run the streets, that they somehow are actually even in charge of this country remotely. And we're just sitting there and allowing that to happen. Well, I'm just going to say, if this is still the situation within 24 to 48 hours, that's absolutely unacceptable, right? It's unacceptable now, quite frankly. And sure, to an extent, you know, the local police department are also the ones allowing this to happen. I get that. There's all these legal challenges, but you just can't let it happen. Let me just put it that way. For whatever you got, you cannot allow it to happen, right? But that's currently what they're doing. And I'm just going to say, again, prepare for this stuff, okay? It is midterm season. They went quiet for a couple months. They're obsessed with other things. This absolutely is coming back. And to an extent, it's because it's actually kind of effective, because for leftists, even though it's staged, even though they're the violent ones, it portrays this image of civil unrest in America, and that looks bad for the incumbents. And then, yeah, like you have so many people, the amount of even Republican people I know who fell for the Alex Preddy or Renee Good stuff, you know, this type of emotional propaganda is very compelling to people, but we got to be prepared to combat it. You know, that's just simply the truth. But there you have the situation over in Newark. I would also bring you the news here that apparently as Trump, Vance, and many administration officials spoke today at Arlington National Cemetery, this is a separate left-wing protest, simply to commemorate the fallen, right? Commemorate the troops who lost their lives in combat at the wreath-laying ceremony. We had leftists who showed up to protest. I'm not making that up. These are just not normal people. Yeah, well, classy as ever, right, Democrats? But if you want to sit there and say, oh, that's just a few dozen lunatics, you know, it's very interesting how it seems to me across America, first of all, there's quite a few quote unquote dozen or so lunatics every 2 seconds when you look at any left wing protests. It's funny how absolutely none of them are composed of well adjusted, normal looking people. It's something's wrong upstairs. Okay. Let me just put it that way, which, you know, you look at the rates of mental illness in this country over the past 20 years and correlate that with the rise in popular left-wing politics. It's very interesting. But anyways, if you want to say that, I would point out, no, it's the Democrat Party itself as well, right? They stand in lockstep actually with the people protesting right now outside of the Arlington Cemetery, because likewise, you may have seen today the Democrats released the following social media message on Memorial Day saying, quote, "Today we honor the American heroes who made the ultimate sacrifice in Trump's war with Iran." Basically just trying to make Memorial Day about the Iran war and, you know, spread a political message, obviously using dead troops in order to do so. Not typically seen as a very classy behavior, especially on a day like this. But what's quite interesting is that the Democrats deleted this. They actually deleted this post amid the backlash and then changed it just to say, oh, we remember and honor those who have made the ultimate sacrifice to protect our country and defend our freedoms. And then it's just a generic thing. So first they put out the political message and then deleted it for just the non-political one. To which I say, you know, why even delete it at this point? You know, the Democrats are saying, like, this is who we are. This is how we feel. This is what we stand for. They did not issue a public apology. They simply just changed their post. You know, why would you take this down? I thought, you know, if you listen to DNC media and this type of stuff, they're constantly saying, oh, we need to fight harder against the Trump administration. We need to start getting down and dirty, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so you're doing that. You know, this is what you're all about. This is your party. Why would you take that down? Right? Why don't you just be honest about what you stand for? Much like Andy Kim, to him I asked as well, why don't you just be honest about what you stand for? You can't show up to a protest you know is going to devolve into violence and then, you know, try to say, oh, well, I told them not to be violent. Okay, they didn't listen and you stood there with them anyway. So what are we supposed to say about that, right? But, you know, of course, they'll never do that. They'll never be honest. Anyways, that said, guys, there you have that. As I said, these people are crazy. Okay, to quote the State of the Union. What else needs to be said? That said, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.